Some love stories don't begin with roses or passionate vows. They begin with a stark truth, a practical need, a contract signed not for passion, but for survival. Today, let us journey back to the American West of the 1880s, to a small town called Red Fern Ridge. Here, amid the wild and windswept prairie, lived a schoolteacher who thought she had made peace with a life of solitude, and a giant, lonely man who believed marriage was merely a contract. Their story is a testament to the fact that sometimes, love is not something we find, but something that grows quietly from respect, courage, and shelter. It is like a wildflower, not dazzling but resilient, taking root in the driest soil only to blossom into something beautiful. So please, settle in, pour a warm cup of tea, and let us listen to the story of Abigail and Boaz. The September wind carried the scent of dying grass through the wooden slats of the one-room schoolhouse in Red Fern Ridge. For 8 years, Miss Abigail Wyn's world had been contained within this room. At 33, she had made her peace with the word spinster. Dreams of a home and the laughter of children had long been buried beneath years of silence. Her life was a peaceful cycle: wake before dawn, walk to the school, tend to the children aged 6 to 14, and then return to her small cottage and the silence that had become her constant companion. This schoolhouse was more than a workplace. It was her refuge, her purpose, her identity. Here, she mattered. Here, she was not a pitiable, unmarried woman. As the children worked on their slates, Abigail's gaze drifted out the window. The Wyoming prairie stretched endlessly, beautiful and harsh. She hadn't chosen this land, not really. 8 years ago, she came here to flee a broken engagement, to escape a society where a woman's worth was measured by her dowry. The first years were hard. The isolation, the brutal winters, and a loneliness that seeped into her bones on long, windy nights. But eventually, she found her place. The children adored her. Their parents respected her. She had carved out a small but meaningful existence. Still, lately, as she watched her former students marry and start families, a familiar ache would settle in her chest. She had made peace with being alone, she told herself, but peace was not the same as happiness. The sound of heavy boots on the wooden steps pulled her back to the present. The door creaked open, and a giant shadow fell across the threshold. Abigail looked up, and her breath caught in her throat. Boaz Cutter, the giant who owned the largest ranch in 3 counties, stood there, his black Stetson held respectfully in hands as large as fans. His face was etched with the lines of a man who spent his life under the prairie sun. But it was his eyes that struck her most, a deep brown that seemed impossibly gentle in such an intimidating frame. "Miss Wyn," his voice was low and rumbling, like distant thunder. "Might I have a word with you in private?" Abigail felt tiny as she followed him onto the porch. She folded her hands in front of her, a nervous habit. This was unprecedented. "Miss Wyn," he began, "I need a wife." He said it plainly, as if discussing the weather. "And you need strong sons to guard your winters." The words hit Abigail like a physical blow. She stared at him, certain she had misheard. No courtship, no pretty promises. Just an honest truth. I don't understand what you're asking, Mr. Cutter." "I'm not asking," he replied, his voice gentle but firm. "I'm stating 2 facts. I have a ranch that needs a woman's touch, and this year's winter will be hard. You have no one to look after you when the snow flies deep. And this town has ideas about unmarried women that aren't getting any kinder." His directness was both shocking and somehow refreshing. "But, we hardly know each other." "You know I'm honest," he replied. "You know I work hard. You know this ranch can provide for you better than teaching ever will. And, he hesitated, then added softly, you know you're tired of being alone. That last statement struck her with painful accuracy. Why me? She asked in a whisper. I don't want a girl, he said. I want a woman who knows her own mind, who has faced life and not run from it. That tells me everything I need to know about your character. What exactly are you proposing, Mr. Cutter? Marriage, he said simply. A partnership. I won't lie to you and say it's about love. But I know about respect. And in time, maybe we'd find something more than just convenience in each other's company. The honesty was breathtaking. Abigail watched the giant man ride away, her carefully ordered world turned upside down by a proposition that was as practical as it was extraordinary. That evening, Abigail sat before the marriage contract. The terms were more than fair. A marriage of mutual convenience, she read softly, with the understanding that affection may grow but is not required. The clinical language was strangely comforting. News travels fast on the prairie. By the next day, the whole town seemed to know. The reactions were mixed. I think it's romantic, declared Mary Patterson, a former student. I think it's scandalous, countered Mrs. Hartwell, the preacher's wife. But it was 8-year-old Tommy Fletcher who offered the most compelling argument. Miss Wyn, are you really going to marry Mr. Cutter? Because he fixed our fence when Papa hurt his back, and he didn't ask for anything. Mama says gentle hands mean a gentle heart. That evening, Abigail took her mother's wedding ring from its box. Boaz Cutter was offering her a chance, not at romantic love, but at partnership and respect. With a steady hand, she signed her name, Abigail Wyn, soon to be Abigail Cutter. The morning she delivered the signed contract, she also brought her teaching slate, the symbol of her independence. Boaz met her near the corral. As she handed him the contract, she saw the tension in his face release. Are you certain? He asked quietly. As certain as anyone can be about the unknown, she replied. But I have conditions. Boaz, he corrected her gently. And I expected you would. She asked to continue teaching and for separate rooms. He agreed immediately. We are strangers entering a practical arrangement, he said. There is no rush. His easy acceptance surprised her. Boaz, she tested his name. What do you expect from me? A ghost of a smile touched his lips. I don't know how to be a husband, either. I figure we'll learn together. Their wedding took place on a crisp October morning, with only a handful of witnesses. When the Reverend pronounced them husband and wife, Boaz lifted her hand and pressed a gentle kiss to her knuckles. Their new home was comfortable, but what astonished her most was a large bookshelf filled with volumes by Shakespeare and Dickens. My mother was a teacher, he explained, amused by her surprise. This discovery created an unexpected bridge between them. That night, for the first time in 8 years, Abigail fell asleep in a house where she was not alone. Their life settled into a comfortable rhythm. Evenings were spent quietly in the parlor. But there were moments, when their hands brushed, or she would catch him watching her, that she knew something more complex was growing between them. The clearest symbol of this new beginning was the small kitchen garden. Abigail knelt in the dirt, planting seeds. This feels hopeful, she said. The word hope hung between them. But their peace was disturbed by Marcus Blackwood, the resentful neighboring rancher. He began asking questions, suggesting their marriage was just a convenience. He thinks a woman like you wouldn't willingly tie herself to a man like me, Boaz said, the tension clear in his voice. The words stung. A surprising protectiveness rose within her. To quell the rumors, they decided to act more like a couple in public. At church, Abigail took Boaz's arm. The town's reaction was immediate. When Boaz told the doctor he was a fortunate man, he looked down at Abigail with genuine warmth. Her heart skipped a beat. "I didn't marry you because I had no other choice," Boaz told her later. "I married you because I wanted you." "I wanted you, too," she confessed. "Not just for the security. But you. The man who reads poetry and builds bookshelves." They stood there, a new understanding passing between them. The threat from Marcus Blackwood materialized on a gray November morning. He arrived claiming Boaz's north pasture was his. That night, Boaz brought out an old silver pocket watch. "My father's," he said quietly. "He was found in that pasture." He explained his father had died of a heart attack, but he'd been in disputes with Blackwood. A heavy suspicion filled the room. "This could get dangerous," Boaz said. "I'm giving you a chance to leave." "Stop," Abigail cut him off. "Do you think I'm the kind of woman to run at the first sign of trouble? This is my home now. Our home. We will face it together." She reached across the table and took his hands. "You're not alone anymore," she said softly. "We protect each other." The proof of Blackwood's deception was discovered tucked inside a library book. It was a practice copy of a forged land deed. Abigail's trained eye saw the fraud immediately. She ran to the north pasture. "You need to see this," she said, breathless. As Boaz read, his face darkened. He was perfecting his technique, he said. The horrific truth dawned. "My father died 20 years ago. Right here. Alone. It would have been the perfect time to cover up a crime." The accusation of murder hung between them. Just then, Marcus Blackwood and 4 armed men rode up. "Cutter," he called. "Last chance. Sign the deed, or things get unpleasant." "You're wasting your time, Mr. Blackwood," Abigail said, her voice commanding. "We know about the forged deed." Blackwood's face went pale, but then he sneered. Ask him what really happened the night his father died. He brazenly confessed to a fight, cloaking murder in the language of self-defense. "You killed him," Boaz growled. "An accident," Blackwood shrugged. "And pretty young widows sometimes need comforting in their grief." The threat was clear. But Abigail felt a fierce determination. "You made one mistake, Marcus," she said, looking him in the eye. "You assumed I was the kind of woman who could be intimidated. You were wrong." Blackwood gave them until sundown the next day. That night, Boaz brought out a Winchester rifle. He had been a soldier. "You don't have to do this alone," she said. "Then teach me." They spent an hour in the barn, practicing with a pistol. By the end, she could hit her target. The next morning brought unexpected hope. Drive, Morrison, the Reverend, and other men from town arrived, armed. "Word has gotten around," Boaz told her. "They're going to stand with us." They devised a plan. The townsmen would set an ambush. Abigail fought for her role. "I will not hide while you risk your lives to protect me." She would be positioned at the upstairs window. As the sun began to set, the men took their positions. Abigail sat by the window, her loaded pistol in her hands. Beside her sat the brass school bell. In the distance, 5 riders approached. Blackwood and his men rode into the yard, confident of an easy victory. Boaz stood alone before the porch. When they were in range, Abigail lifted the school bell and rang it 3 times. The clear, bronze notes echoed across the prairie. That was the sound of your luck running out, Marcus. Drive, Morrison said, stepping out from behind the barn. The battle erupted. Abigail rang the bell twice more. She raised her pistol, aimed, and fired. The man fell. The weight of it hit her, but there was no time for reflection. Below, Boaz fought like a trained soldier. But Marcus Blackwood was stalking toward the house. Come out here, Cutter. Stop hiding behind that schoolteacher wife of yours. The insult sent rage through Abigail. I'm not hiding, she called down. I'm right here. Blackwood looked up and aimed his gun at her window. But Boaz was already moving, lunging with a roar. Don't you dare point that gun at my wife. The two men crashed into each other, wrestling in the dust. The personal war had begun. Blackwood broke free and raised his pistol. You should have died with your father, he screamed. Without thinking, Abigail hurled the heavy brass school bell with all her might. It struck Blackwood on the side of the head, and his shot went wide. And then Boaz was on him. His hands closed around Blackwood's throat. This is for my father, Boaz growled. Abigail saw a darkness in her husband's face, a line about to be crossed. Boaz, she called from the window, her voice cutting through his rage. Don't. He's not worth damning yourself for. His eyes found hers. Love warring with vengeance? Slowly, his hands loosened. You're right, he said, his voice thick with emotion. He's not worth it. When it was over, Blackwood was captured. Justice would be served. Boaz and Abigail held each other, trembling. The Reverend found her mother's wedding ring on the ground. She looked at the ring, then up at Boaz. Will you put it on my finger? She asked softly. His hands were gentle as he slid the ring into place. With this ring, he said, I thee wed. Not from convenience or necessity, but from love. From love, she repeated. 6 months later, Abigail stood in the nursery Boaz had built, her hands on her belly. Spring had arrived. Through the window, their garden was thriving. I'm telling him about his father, she said, leaning back against Boaz. About the man who builds cradles, plants gardens, and reads poetry by firelight. They would name their son Samuel, after Boaz's father. Do you ever regret it? Boaz asked. I only regret wasting so many years believing I wasn't worthy of this, she said. Turns out love was the most practical choice all along, he replied. In the distance, the school bell rang. But for now, Abigail and Boaz stood in the peace of their home. The baby kicked beneath her hands. Their son would grow up knowing he was wanted, part of a love story that began with a simple contract, but had bloomed into something beautiful and strong. Outside the window, the prairie stretched to the horizon. Once, its emptiness had mocked her solitude. Now, it spoke to her of abundance, of room to grow, to dream, and to build something lasting. Thank you for listening to the story of Abigail and Boaz. A reminder that family isn't always where we are born, but where we are sheltered. And that true love is sometimes the bravest, most practical choice we can make. We wish you a peaceful evening, and hope this story stays with you in your heart. Until next time.